A boy who lived on the streets shouted to a millionaire, "My mum said that you are my dad," when the air inside the small living room was heavy and suffocating, pressing down on Bruce's lungs as he watched his mother's body shaking beneath the thin blanket. Sweat dripped down Chloe's forehead as she struggled to keep her eyes open. Bruce, only 8 years old, stood by her side, his heart racing with fear he'd never known before. "Mom, please, you need to get up. We need to go to the hospital," he pleaded, his voice trembling as he reached for her hand. The touch of her cold skin sent chills down his spine, deepening the terror in his chest. Chloe's eyes fluttered open briefly, her gaze unfocused and distant. "Bruce, I can't. I'm so tired," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The woman who had always been his pillar of strength, who worked 3 jobs to keep food on their table, now lay helpless before him. The contrast between her usual vibrant self and this fragile figure struck him harder than any physical blow. Through the window, Bruce could see the sun setting, casting long shadows across their modest apartment. Bills with red final notice stamps littered the coffee table, a cruel reminder of their mounting problems. But none of that mattered now. His mother's labored breathing was the only sound that filled his world. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. "I will take you to the hospital, Mom. I know you don't want to, but you need to. Please hold on tight," Bruce said, trying to keep his voice steady despite the fear threatening to overwhelm him. His small hands trembled as he searched the room for anything that could help him move her. With determination beyond his years, Bruce managed to help Chloe to her feet. Her body, usually warm and comforting, felt like ice against his small frame as he supported her weight. The bag with their documents seemed to weigh a ton in his other hand, but he knew they needed them. Every step toward the door drew a pained groan from Chloe, each sound piercing Bruce's heart like a needle. "You'll be fine, Mom. Just hold on. I promise I'll get you to the hospital," he whispered, more to himself than to her, desperately clinging to hope. The journey to the public hospital felt endless. Bruce had found an old wheelchair at the entrance and now pushed it with all his might, his mother's increasingly limp form slumped in it. The waiting room was chaos incarnate, overcrowded with suffering people, harried medical staff rushing past, and an atmosphere thick with desperation. "Please, someone help my mom. She's very sick," Bruce's young voice called out, only to be swallowed by the cacophony of hospital sounds. Nurses hurried past, too overwhelmed to notice the small boy and his dying mother. Tears welled in his eyes, but he fought them back. He couldn't cry now, he had to be strong. Chloe's voice was barely a whisper, her head drooping to one side. I don't know if I'll make it." The words sent ice through Bruce's veins. "Mom, you will make it. Just a little longer, okay? I'll get help, I promise." His voice cracked, but he kept pushing forward, refusing to give up. Finally, a doctor approached them, his face etched with exhaustion. He looked at Chloe with grave concern, immediately recognizing the severity of her condition. "Your mother is very sick, boy. We'll take her inside now." Bruce watched as they transferred Chloe to a stretcher, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. The doctor's next words would change everything. "Your mother has a rare disease. Her body is very weak, and the treatment she needs is extremely expensive. The medication isn't available here, you'd have to purchase it privately." The doctor's expression softened slightly as he continued, "We can keep her comfortable with pain medication until you can get what she needs, but it's a rare medicine. We don't have it here, and by the time we could get it, it may be too late." Bruce stood there, his small frame trembling, as the weight of those words crashed over him. "Is there no other way? We have to figure something out." His voice was choked with emotion, desperate for any alternative. The doctor placed a gentle hand on Bruce's shoulder. "The medication she needs isn't provided by the hospital because it costs a fortune. It's rarely used because of its price. Without it, though he paused, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. Without it, her condition will worsen very quickly. How much time do we have? Bruce's voice was barely audible, fear closing his throat. The doctor looked at Chloe's unconscious form, then back at Bruce. Without the medication, she has at most 24 hours. In that moment, Bruce's world stopped spinning. The bustling hospital sounds faded to a distant hum, and all he could hear was his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. 24 hours. The words echoed in his mind like a death sentence. He approached his mother's bed, tears finally breaking free despite his best efforts to hold them back. "Mom, please stay with me. I don't know what to do, but I'll find a way. I promise." He gripped her hand tightly, as if he could anchor her to life through sheer will. Looking at his mother's pale face, Bruce felt more alone than ever before. But in that moment of despair, a determination began to burn in his chest. He had 24 hours to save his mother's life, and he would do whatever it took. Even if it meant moving mountains, he would find a way. He had to. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, each second carrying them closer to an unthinkable conclusion. Bruce squared his small shoulders, his young mind already racing through possibilities. Time was running out, but he refused to accept defeat. His mother had always been his hero, now it was his turn to be hers. Life had never been easy for Bruce and Chloe, but they had always faced it together. Their tiny one-bedroom apartment, though cramped and worn, had been filled with more love than many mansions. Every morning, Bruce would wake to the sound of his mother humming as she prepared their simple breakfast, making even stale bread taste special with her unwavering smile. Chloe worked 3 jobs, cleaning houses in the morning, waitressing during lunch hours, and doing data entry late into the night. Her hands were rough from work, but they remained gentle when stroking Bruce's hair or wiping away his tears. Despite their poverty, she had managed to keep Bruce in school, often going hungry herself to ensure he had lunch money. "Education is your ticket to a better life, my love," she would say, her eyes tired but full of hope. "Promise me you'll study hard no matter what happens." At school, Bruce faced his own daily battles. His worn-out uniforms and second-hand books made him an easy target for bullies. The cruel whispers followed him through the hallways. "Where's your dad? Does he even have one? Bet his mum doesn't even know who his father is." Each word stung, but Bruce never fought back. Instead, he channeled his energy into his studies, making his mother proud with every good grade. There was one teacher, Mrs. Thompson, who saw beyond his shabby appearance. She would often stay after school to help him with homework, sometimes slipping an extra sandwich into his bag when she thought he wasn't looking. "You have something special, Bruce," she would say. "A strength that comes from knowing what really matters in life." Their apartment walls held no family photos except a picture of Bruce and Chloe at a local fair 2 years ago. A kind stranger had taken it, capturing their genuine laughter as they shared a single cotton candy. That photo represented everything. They were just the two of them against the world, finding joy in the simplest things. But at night, when Chloe thought Bruce was asleep, he would sometimes hear her crying softly. She would sit at their small kitchen table, bills spread out before her, calculating and recalculating, trying to stretch every penny. Once he caught her holding a worn photograph, quickly hidden away when she noticed him watching. He never asked about it, sensing it was connected to the sadness that sometimes clouded her eyes. Their neighbors in the rundown apartment building knew them well. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door would watch Bruce when Chloe worked late, teaching him Spanish and feeding him homemade tortillas. Mr. Chen from the convenience store downstairs would sometimes forget to charge them for essential items, waving away Chloe's protests with a kind smile. Bruce had learned early to be resourceful. He collected bottles for recycling, helped Mr. Chen stock shelves for extra change, and even started a small business helping younger kids with their homework. Every penny he earned went straight into the jar labeled emergency fund, a lesson in saving he'd learned from watching his mother. The hardest times were when Chloe got sick. She would try to hide it, going to work with a fever, taking extra shifts despite her exhaustion. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she would insist, but Bruce saw how she winced with every movement, how her hands shook as she tried to keep working. Recently, things had gotten worse. The coughing started 3 months ago, deep, racking coughs that left her gasping for breath. She dismissed it as a cold, but Bruce noticed how she grew paler, thinner, weaker. The medicine from the pharmacy helped less and less, but they couldn't afford a doctor's visit. Their small collection of belongings told the story of their life. Chloe's nursing school textbooks from before she had to drop out when Bruce was born, Bruce's academic awards carefully preserved in a plastic folder. A small box of Christmas decorations they put up every year, no matter how tight money was, and a mysterious envelope Chloe kept locked in her dresser drawer. What they lacked in material possessions, they made up for in their bond. Every Sunday, no matter how tired Chloe was, they would have their special time together. Sometimes it was just sitting on their small balcony, sharing an orange while making up stories about the shapes in the clouds. In other times they would walk to the park, where Chloe would push Bruce on the swings, her laugh mixing with his as they pretended they were flying. But now, watching his mother's strength fade day by day, Bruce felt their carefully constructed world crumbling. The emergency fund jar, once their safety net, seemed pathetically inadequate against the mountain of medical bills looming before them. The landlord's increasingly aggressive demands for overdue rent echoed in his ears, along with his mother's weakening cough. Each morning, as Bruce helped his mother prepare for work, he saw how her hands trembled more, how she had to pause for breath after the smallest exertion. The dark circles under her eyes grew deeper, her smile more forced. Yet she never complained, never stopped trying to protect him from the harsh realities of their situation. "We have each other," she would say, pulling him close. "That makes us richer than any millionaire." But now, as Bruce watched her struggle just to stand, he wondered if love alone would be enough to save them from the storm gathering on their horizon. The weight of their circumstances pressed down on his young shoulders, but Bruce refused to break. He was his mother's son, after all, and she had taught him that giving up was never an option. As their world grew darker, he clung to the hope that somehow, somewhere he would find a way to make things better. He had to, because losing his mother was the one thing he couldn't bear to face. The crisis crept up on them like a shadow, growing longer and darker with each passing day. What started as occasional coughing fits had transformed into something far more sinister. Chloe could no longer hide her deteriorating condition, especially after collapsing at her waitressing job last week. The restaurant manager, despite years of loyal service, had no choice but to let her go. "I'm sorry," Chloe had said, genuine regret in his voice, "but we can't risk having you collapse while carrying hot plates. Come back when you're better." The words "when you're better" hung in the air, like a cruel joke. They both knew that without money for treatment, better was becoming an increasingly distant possibility. The loss of that job triggered a devastating domino effect. Without the waitressing income, they fell further behind on rent. The landlord, Mr. Peterson, initially sympathetic to their situation, was now facing pressure from his own superiors. His visits became more frequent, his tone less understanding. 3 months behind, "Chloe," he would say, shuffling uncomfortably. "The company's breathing down my neck. I can't keep making excuses for you." The mounting bills arrived with alarming regularity, rent notices stamped in angry red, utility warnings threatening disconnection, and now the accumulating medical bills from their brief emergency room visits. Each piece of paper represented another crack in their already fragile world. Bruce had taken to intercepting the mail, hiding the most threatening notices to spare his mother the stress. He started spending his afternoons at the busy intersection near their apartment, selling candy to passing cars. The summer heat was brutal, and most people ignored him, but he persisted, knowing each dollar could mean another day's worth of his mother's basic medication. "Where did you get this money?" Chloe had asked one evening, finding the extra bills he'd slipped into her purse. "Mrs. Thompson gave me some tutoring work," he lied, hating the deception but knowing his mother would never approve of him selling on the streets. The pride in her eyes at his supposed tutoring made the lie even harder to bear, and their meals became increasingly sparse. Bruce noticed how Chloe would claim she'd already eaten at work, pushing her portion toward him. He pretended not to see how her clothes hung looser each week, how she had to tighten her belt to an impossible degree. The breaking point came when their electricity was cut off. The summer heat turned their apartment into an oven, making Chloe's breathing even more labored. That night, Bruce studied by candlelight, the flickering flame casting shadows on his mother's sleeping form. He could hear her wheezing even in sleep, each breath a battle. Their neighbors tried to help in small ways. Mrs. Rodriguez brought over food, claiming she'd made too much. Mr. Chen found some old fans in his storeroom, but everyone in their building was fighting their own battles with poverty, and there was only so much they could do. The local clinic had become their second home. The staff knew them by name now, though their sympathetic looks did little to ease the burden of mounting medical bills. The basic medications they could afford barely touched the surface of Chloe's condition. "Your mother needs specialized treatment," the clinic doctor had explained gently. "This isn't something we can handle here. She needs to see specialists, get proper tests done." Bruce had memorized the prices of everything his mother needed. The specialized medication, $2,000 per month. The diagnostic tests, $3,500. The consultation with the specialist, $800. Numbers that might as well have been millions for all their ability to afford them. He started keeping a notebook, meticulously tracking their expenses and his small earnings from candy sales. The pages filled with calculations and possibilities, each one ending with the same devastating conclusion: they were drowning, and the surface was getting further away. The heat wave that hit the city that week proved especially cruel. Without air conditioning, Chloe's condition deteriorated rapidly. Bruce would wet towels with cold water from their neighbor's apartment, laying them on his mother's forehead as she tossed in feverish sleep. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she would insist during her lucid moments. "Just need to rest a bit," but the darkness under her eyes told a different story, as did the bloody tissues she tried to hide from him. Their world had shrunk to the size of their apartment, and even that was threatening to disappear. The final eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday, giving them 3 days to pay or leave. Bruce stood in the hallway, holding the letter, feeling the weight of their situation crushing his young shoulders. That evening, as he counted the day's earnings from candy sales, a mere $12.35, Bruce heard his mother's cough turn into something worse. The sound of her gasping for breath sent him running to her room, where he found her doubled over, clutching her chest. The severity of their crisis hit him with full force as he watched his mother struggle for air. They had no money, no electricity, no more time to wait. The specialized medication they couldn't afford was no longer a future need, but an immediate necessity. His mother's life hung by a thread, and all their usual solutions, payment plans, borrowing, odd jobs, were exhausted. As Bruce held his mother's trembling hand, he realized they had reached the end of their rope. The candy sales, the tutoring, the bottle collecting, it was all like trying to empty an ocean with a teaspoon. They needed help, real help, and they needed it now. But in a world that had shown them little kindness, where could they possibly turn? The answer would come soon, though not in any way Bruce could have anticipated. Their desperate situation was about to collide with fate in a way that would change their lives forever. The intersection was busier than usual that sweltering afternoon. Bruce stood at his usual spot, a box of candy clutched to his chest, watching the endless stream of luxury cars crawl past. The summer heat shimmered off the asphalt, making the air thick and heavy. His threadbare t-shirt was soaked with sweat, but he couldn't afford to rest, not with his mother's condition worsening by the hour. "Please help me, it's for my mom's medicine," he called out to a passing car, his voice growing hoarse from repetition. Most drivers avoided eye contact, Some quickly rolled up their windows, while others tossed him looks of annoyance or pity. Bruce had learned to steel himself against the rejection, focusing instead on the occasional kind soul who would buy his candy or offer spare change. That's when he noticed her, a woman in her early 30s, elegantly dressed in a white blouse and black skirt, walking purposefully along the sidewalk. Something about her bearing spoke of wealth and sophistication, yet Bruce noticed she seemed distracted, her hand occasionally rising to her throat as if she were having trouble breathing. He was about to approach her with his candy when he saw her stumble. Time seemed to slow as he watched her face contort in pain, her hand clutching at her chest. Without thinking, Bruce dropped his candy box on the curb and ran toward her. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he called out, reaching her just as her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the sidewalk, gasping for air, her perfectly styled hair now disheveled against the concrete. Bruce knelt beside her, his heart racing but his mind surprisingly clear. The scene was too familiar. He had watched his mother struggle for breath too many times not to recognize the signs of distress. "Please, ma'am, stay calm. I'm going to help you," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman who he would later learn was named Rose tried to speak, but could only manage weak gasps. Her eyes, wide with panic, locked onto his, silently pleading for help. Around them, the busy street continued its chaotic dance. People walked past, some slowing to stare but none stopping to help. Cars honked impatiently at the growing crowd, their drivers unaware of the drama unfolding on the sidewalk. Why does no one stop? Why does no one help? Bruce thought, feeling the same desperation he experienced at the hospital with his mother. But this time he knew what to do. He pulled out the old cell phone he kept for emergencies, the one luxury Chloe insisted he maintain for safety, and dialed emergency services. "Please come quickly. There's a woman who's very ill. We're at the crossing near the traffic light on Madison Avenue. Please hurry." His voice shook with urgency as he gave the dispatcher details. While waiting for the ambulance, Bruce held the woman's hand firmly, just as he did with his mother during her attacks. "You'll be okay. The ambulance is coming. Everything will be fine," he reassured her, though his own heart was pounding with fear. Rose's breathing remained labored, but her grip on his hand told him she understood. Her expensive jewelry glinted in the sunlight, such a stark contrast to her current vulnerable state. Bruce noticed how her designer watch probably cost more than all his mother's medical bills combined. Yet in this moment, money meant nothing. She was just another person in need of help. The minutes crawled by like hours until finally the welcome sound of sirens cut through the city noise. The ambulance's lights flashed against the glass buildings, drawing more onlookers to the scene. As the paramedics approached with their equipment, Rose managed to find her voice. You didn't leave," she whispered between gasps. "Why?" Bruce looked at her, tears welling in his eyes as he thought of his mother. "Because I know what it's like to watch someone suffer. I couldn't just walk away." The paramedics quickly took over, checking Rose's vital signs and preparing her for transport. Bruce stepped back, watching as they lifted her onto a stretcher. His candy lay scattered on the curb, some boxes crushed by passing feet, representing yet another day's lost income. But somehow that didn't seem to matter right now. Before they loaded her into the ambulance, Rose reached out and caught Bruce's hand one last time. Her breathing was steadier now, though still labored. "What's your name?" she asked. "Bruce, ma'am." "Thank you, Bruce. You saved my life." Her eyes, though tired, held genuine gratitude. "Let me help you in return. What do you need?" Bruce thought of his mother, of their mounting bills, of the expensive medication she desperately needed. But looking at this woman who had just experienced her own medical crisis, he couldn't bring himself to ask for anything. "I just want you to be okay, ma'am. That's all." Rose's expression changed to one of surprise, clearly not expecting such a selfless response from a street child. As the paramedics prepared to close the ambulance doors, Bruce made a split-second decision. "Wait. Can I come with you?" I need to make sure you're all right." The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Even with his own pressing problems, he couldn't bear the thought of another person suffering alone. The paramedics exchanged glances but didn't object when Rose nodded weakly. As Bruce climbed into the ambulance, he had no way of knowing that this simple act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. His lost candy and the day's potential earnings were forgotten as the ambulance sped toward the hospital, its siren cutting through the afternoon traffic like a knife through the summer heat. Little did Bruce know, he had just saved the wife of the one person who could help save his mother if only fate would allow it. At the hospital, while doctors attended to Rose, Bruce sat quietly in the waiting room, his thoughts drifting back to his mother. The pristine private hospital was a stark contrast to the crowded public facility where Chloe lay fighting for her life. Here the halls gleamed, nurses moved unhurriedly, and the air smelled of antiseptic rather than desperation. His phone vibrated a message from Mrs. Rodriguez saying Chloe's condition had worsened. Bruce's heart clenched, but before he could respond, a doctor emerged to announce that Rose had suffered an anxiety attack and would recover fully. The relief that flooded through him was genuine, even amid his own worries. As Bruce prepared to leave, quietly satisfied that Rose would be okay, a nurse approached him with unexpected news. "Mrs. Rose would like to see you," she said, gesturing toward a private room. Inside, Rose sat propped up against crisp white pillows, looking more composed though still pale. "Bruce," she smiled weakly. "I wanted to thank you properly." She reached for her purse, but Bruce stepped back. "Please, ma'am, I don't want money. I'm just glad you're okay." The words came naturally, though his empty pockets seemed to burn with the weight of his mother's unpaid medical bills. Rose studied him carefully. "You're different from other children I've met. Tell me, why were you selling candy at that intersection?" Something in her gentle tone broke through Bruce's usual reserve. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or the stress of recent events, but he found himself telling her about Chloe's illness, their financial struggles, and the desperate race against time to save his mother. "She's all I have," he finished quietly, wiping away unexpected tears, "and now she's in the public hospital because we can't afford better care." Rose's expression changed subtly. The public hospital. Which ward? When Bruce told her, she reached for her phone, her fingers moving quickly over the screen. "I might be able to help. My husband is on the hospital board." But her words were cut short as Bruce's own phone rang. The hospital was calling about Chloe. His hands trembled as he answered, fear gripping his heart. The doctor's voice was grave. "Your mother's condition has deteriorated significantly. She's asking for you." "And Bruce?" "She says there's something important you need to know." Bruce ran through the hospital corridors, his heart pounding. When he reached Chloe's room, she lay there looking smaller and frailer than ever. Her eyes, when they focused on him, held a desperate urgency. "Bruce, my love," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "There's something I should have told you long ago." She gestured weakly toward her bag. "The envelope." "In my bag, please." With shaking hands, Bruce retrieved a worn envelope from her bag. Inside was a photograph he'd never seen before, a younger version of his mother standing next to a man he didn't recognize. But something about the man's face seemed strangely familiar. "Your father," Chloe said, her breathing labored. "His name is Jimmy. I should have told you before, but I was afraid. Afraid of disrupting his life. Afraid of rejection." Bruce stared at the photograph, trying to process this revelation. "My father." "Yes," Chloe's voice grew weaker. "I see him sometimes. On the news. He's become very successful. I never wanted to burden him, but now." She coughed, the sound rattling in her chest. "Now you need to know. You deserve to know." Bruce looked closer at the photograph, recognition slowly dawning. The man's face was indeed familiar. He'd seen it on business news segments, on billboards around the city. Jimmy Sterling, the millionaire businessman. "But why now, Mom? Why tell me this now?" Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "Because I don't know how much time I have left, my love. And you need someone to take care of you." If her voice broke off in another coughing fit. "Don't say that, Mom. You're going to be fine. We'll find a way to get the medicine." But even as he spoke, Bruce's mind was racing, connecting impossible dots. The man in the photo, his father, was wealthy enough to afford the treatment his mother desperately needed. Before he could process this further, Chloe's monitors began beeping erratically. Her eyes rolled back, and her body went limp. Medical staff rushed in, pushing Bruce aside as they worked to stabilize her. "Mum," he cried out, clutching the photograph. "Mum, please don't leave me." In the chaos that followed, as doctors fought to save Chloe's life, Bruce stood pressed against the wall, the photograph crumpled in his tight grip. The face of his father, a stranger who might be his only hope, seemed to stare back at him from the creased paper. A nurse finally approached him, her face gentle but serious. "Your mother is stable for now, but she's slipped into a coma. The next 24 hours will be critical." Bruce looked down at the photograph again, his young mind grappling with an impossible decision. His mother needed expensive treatment immediately, and somewhere in this city was a man who might be able to help his father, who didn't even know he existed. The irony wasn't lost on him that just hours ago he'd helped save the life of a wealthy woman who offered to return the favor, and now he discovered his own father was someone who could easily afford his mother's treatment. But how could he prove it? How could he reach a man who lived in a world so different from his own? As he sat beside his comatose mother, Bruce made a decision. With nothing left to lose and his mother's life hanging by a thread, he would find Jimmy Sterling. Whether his father believed him or not, he had to try. The photograph was his only proof, his only chance at saving his mother's life. What Bruce didn't know was that fate had already begun weaving its complex web. The woman he'd saved from an anxiety attack and the father he'd just discovered were more closely connected than he could have imagined. As Bruce clutched the photograph, he turned to you, his eyes filled with both hope and determination. "You know, sometimes life gives us unexpected chances to make a difference. Just like you have a chance right now to join our story by subscribing to this channel. Every subscription gives stories like mine a chance to be heard." Thunder rumbled ominously as Bruce stood on the sidewalk, staring at his belongings scattered across the wet pavement. The landlord's words still rang in his ears. 3 months behind is too much. I have bills to pay too. The eviction had been swift and merciless, carried out in the pouring rain by 2 burly men who showed no sympathy for his pleas. "Please, just give me more time," Bruce had begged, his voice cracking. "My mom's in the hospital. She could wake up any moment," but his words fell on deaf ears as they continued tossing his life onto the street. His meager possessions, worn clothes, dog-eared schoolbooks, and the few photographs they owned lay scattered in puddles, becoming increasingly sodden in the downpour. The precious photograph of Jimmy, his only link to his father, was safely tucked into his jacket pocket, close to his heart. Standing there in the rain, Bruce felt smaller than ever. At 8 years old, he was facing homelessness while his mother lay comatose in the hospital. The cruel irony wasn't lost on him. Somewhere in this same city, his father lived in luxury, probably unaware his son was being thrown onto the streets. With trembling hands, Bruce gathered what he could salvage into his school backpack. Each item represented a memory: the sweater his mother had mended countless times, the math textbook Mrs. Thompson had given him, the small box containing his mother's costume jewelry, all they had left of any value. The rain intensified, soaking through his clothes, but Bruce barely noticed. His mind was racing, formulating a plan. He knew Jimmy Sterling worked at a prestigious office building downtown. He'd seen it in news reports, a gleaming glass tower that seemed to touch the clouds. "I have to try," he whispered to himself, clutching his backpack closer. "For Mom." The journey downtown was a blur of wet streets and hostile stares. His soaked appearance drew suspicious looks from passers-by, some clutching their bags closer as he passed. The weight of his wet clothes and backpack seemed to increase with every step, but Bruce pressed on. When he finally reached the towering office building, its grandeur made him pause. Security guards in crisp uniforms stood at the entrance, and well-dressed people streamed in and out through revolving doors. Bruce's heart sank as he realized how impossible his task seemed. Still, he approached the entrance, only to be immediately stopped by a guard. "Where do you think you're going, kid?" "Please, I need to see Mr. Sterling." "It's important," Bruce pleaded, reaching for the photograph in his pocket. The guard's laugh was harsh. "Yeah, right. Everyone needs to see Mr. Sterling. Beat it, kid, before I call the police." Defeated but not giving up, Bruce retreated to watch the building from across the street. Hours passed as he stood in the rain, scanning every face that emerged from those gleaming doors. His stomach growled with hunger, reminding him he hadn't eaten since yesterday. Then, as evening approached, he saw Jimmy Sterling himself, emerging from the building surrounded by security and assistants. Bruce's heart leapt. Without thinking, he darted across the street, dodging cars that honked angrily. "Mr. Sterling." "Please wait," he shouted, running toward the group. Security moved quickly to intercept him, but Bruce was faster, fueled by desperation. He managed to get close enough to pull out the photograph. "Please, look at this. You're my father." The words seemed to freeze time. Jimmy Sterling stopped, turning slowly to face the soaking wet boy holding a crumpled photograph. Security had grabbed Bruce's arms, but he continued speaking, his voice breaking with emotion. "My mom, she's Chloe. She's dying in the hospital. Please, just look at the picture." Jimmy's face paled at the mention of Chloe's name. He stepped forward, hand outstretched for the photograph, when a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Jimmy? What's going on here?" Bruce's heart stopped. He knew that voice. Looking up, he saw Rose, the woman he'd helped earlier, stepping out of a luxury car. She looked between Jimmy and Bruce, confusion evident on her face. Rose, Jimmy started, but she cut him off. "This is the boy who saved me today," she said, recognition dawning. "But why is he calling you his father?" The security guard still held Bruce firmly, but now everyone's attention was focused on Jimmy Sterling, who stood frozen, staring at the photograph in his hands. The image of his younger self with Chloe seemed to burn in his grip. "Is it true?" Rose demanded, her voice sharp. "Jimmy, is this boy your son?" The rain continued to pour, but no one seemed to notice anymore. Bruce stood shivering, watching as his father's carefully constructed world began to crumble. In that moment he realized that his desperate attempt to save his mother might have just destroyed another family. I don't know," Jimmy finally managed, his voice barely audible above the rain. He looked at Bruce, really looked at him for the first time, and something in his expression changed. Perhaps he saw Chloe's eyes staring back at him, or recognized his own features in the boy's face. "Security, let him go," Jimmy commanded softly. As the guards released their grip, Bruce stumbled slightly, exhausted and overwhelmed. But before anyone could say anything more, Bruce's phone rang. The hospital's number flashed on the screen, and his heart plummeted. With trembling hands, he answered the call, aware that both Jimmy and Rose were watching him intently. "Bruce," the doctor's voice was urgent. "Your mother's condition has deteriorated significantly. You need to come immediately." The phone slipped from Bruce's numb fingers, clattering on the wet pavement. In his desperate attempt to find help, had he just lost precious time with his mother? Looking up at Jimmy and Rose, their faces a mix of shock and confusion, Bruce realized he was standing at a crossroads, but which path would lead to saving his mother's life? The tension in Jimmy Sterling's private office could have been cut with a knife. Bruce sat in an oversized leather chair, still dripping wet, while Rose paced the room like a caged tiger. Jimmy stood by the window, the city lights reflecting off his troubled face as he held the photograph that had upended his world. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Rose declared, her earlier gratitude toward Bruce now overshadowed by suspicion. "Jimmy, you can't seriously be considering this. For all we know, this could be an elaborate scam." Bruce clutched his backpack tighter, his mother's urgently needed medicine weighing heavily on his mind. "I'm not lying," he said quietly. "My mom never asked for anything from you. She only told me because..." His voice cracked. "Because she's dying." Jimmy turned from the window, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Chloe," he murmured. "I haven't heard that name in 9 years." He looked at Bruce more carefully now, perhaps seeing hints of himself in the boy's features. "Convenient timing, isn't it?" Rose's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Just when he needs expensive medical treatment. Suddenly you're his father." She turned to Bruce, her eyes sharp. "Did you know who I was when you helped me today? Was that part of your plan?" Bruce felt tears welling up but fought them back. "No, I didn't know who you were. I just wanted to help." Because he swallowed hard, "because I know what it's like to watch someone you love struggle to breathe." Jimmy moved to his desk, pressing a button on his intercom. "Sandra, get Dr. Matthews here immediately. And contact the hospital where Chloe is admitted." His voice was firm, decisive. "What are you doing?" Rose demanded. "Getting answers," Jimmy replied. "If Bruce is my son, a DNA test will prove it." The word test hung in the air like a challenge. Bruce sat straighter, hope flickering in his chest. "I'll take any test you want. But please, my mom needs help now. The doctor said she only has hours left without the proper medication." "How convenient," Rose muttered, but Jimmy held up his hand to silence her. Dr. Matthews arrived promptly, carrying a medical kit. The procedure was quick, a cheek swab from both Jimmy and Bruce. "I'll have the results in a few hours," the doctor promised, leaving with their samples. "Hours we don't have," Bruce whispered, checking his phone again. No new messages from the hospital, but that didn't ease his anxiety. Jimmy studied Bruce intently. "Tell me about your mother. How did you end up on the streets?" Before Bruce could answer, Rose interrupted. "Jimmy, you can't be serious. This boy appears out of nowhere, claims to be your son, and you're just going to listen to his story." Rose, Jimmy's voice was gentle but firm. "This boy saved your life today. The least we can do is hear him out." Bruce took a deep breath and began speaking. He told them everything about their struggle to survive, his mother's deteriorating health, the eviction, his desperate attempts to earn money selling candy. His voice broke when he described watching his mother slip into a coma. "We lost everything," he finished quietly. "But I didn't come here for money or a better life. I just want to save my mom." The sincerity in his voice seemed to touch something in Jimmy. He walked to his desk and picked up his phone. "Which hospital did you say she's in?" "Jimmy, no." Rose's voice was sharp. "You can't just throw money at this situation. What if he's lying? What about our reputation? The media will have a field day." "And what if he's telling the truth?" Jimmy countered, his voice rising for the first time. "What if Chloe dies because we waited for a DNA test? Could you live with that, Rose? Could I?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Bruce watched the exchange, his heart pounding. Every minute they argued was another minute his mother slipped away. Suddenly, Bruce's phone rang again. "The hospital." His hands shaking, he answered on speaker, letting everyone hear. "Bruce," the doctor's voice was grave. "Your mother's condition is critical. We're doing everything we can, but without the specialized medication." "I understand," Bruce whispered, tears finally falling. "Please, just keep her alive a little longer. Please." After the call ended, silence filled the office. Even Rose seemed affected by the desperation in Bruce's voice. Jimmy straightened his tie. "Decision made. I'm transferring her to private care. Whether the DNA test proves Bruce is my son or not, I can't stand by and watch someone die when I have the means to help." Jimmy, Rose started, but he cut her off. No, Rose. Sometimes being human matters more than being careful. If Bruce is my son, I've already missed 8 years of his life. I won't have his mother's death on my conscience too. Bruce stood up, hope warring with fear in his chest. You'll help save her. Yes, Jimmy nodded, already dialing numbers. But understand this, if the DNA test proves you're not my son, there will be consequences for lying. I'm not lying, Bruce said firmly, meeting Jimmy's eyes, and I'll accept any consequences. I just want my mom to live. As Jimmy made arrangements for Chloe's transfer, Bruce caught Rose watching him with an unreadable expression. The woman he'd helped earlier that day now looked at him like he was a threat to everything she held dear. Bruce realized that in trying to save one family, he might be tearing another apart. The next few hours would change everything for better or worse. As the DNA test results loomed and his mother fought for her life, Bruce could only pray he'd made the right choice in revealing the truth about his father. The private hospital room where Chloe had been transferred was a world away from the crowded ward she'd left behind. Machines hummed softly, monitoring her vital signs while the specialized medication flowed through her IV. Bruce sat beside her bed, holding her still cold hand, while outside the room another drama was unfolding. We need to discuss this rationally, Rose's voice carried through the door, tight with controlled anger. You transferred an unknown woman to the most expensive hospital in the city, based on the word of a street child, without any proof. He saved your life, Rose, Jimmy interrupted. Or have you forgotten that so quickly? That's exactly what concerns me, Rose's voice rose sharply. Don't you see how perfect it all is? He helps me, then suddenly appears claiming to be your son? It's too convenient. Inside the room, Bruce winced at each harsh word. He stroked his mother's hand, whispering, I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to cause so much trouble. I just wanted to save you. A nurse entered, checking Chloe's vitals. She gave Bruce a sympathetic smile, having witnessed similar family dramas in these private rooms before. Your mother's numbers are improving, she said softly. The medication seems to be working. Bruce nodded gratefully, but his relief was short-lived as the argument outside intensified. You don't understand, Jimmy, Rose was saying, her voice breaking slightly. You don't know what it's like to be deceived by a child. Something in her tone made Bruce listen more carefully. Jimmy's response was gentler now. Rose, this isn't like what happened with Tommy. This is different. Is it? Rose's laugh was bitter. 3 years ago, a boy exactly his age showed up claiming to be my dead sister's son. He had photos, documents, everything. I welcomed him, loved him, started adoption procedures, only to discover it was all a cruel scam. Do you remember how that nearly destroyed me? Bruce's heart sank as understanding dawned. Rose's hostility wasn't just about him, it was about her own past wounds. But Jimmy sighed heavily. I remember love. But this feels different. Look at him, really look at him. He has Chloe's eyes, my mother's chin. Stop it, Rose snapped. Just stop. The DNA results aren't back yet. Don't get attached to an idea that might destroy everything we've built. Inside the room, Bruce felt tears sliding down his cheeks. He quickly wiped them away as the door opened and Dr. Matthews entered, holding a manila envelope. The results are ready, he announced, bringing everyone into the room. Jimmy stood by the window, his face tense. Rose perched on the edge of a chair, her fingers gripping the armrest. Bruce remained by his mother's bed, his heart thundering in his chest. Dr. Matthews cleared his throat. The DNA test shows, he paused, looking at Jimmy, a 99.9% probability that you are Bruce's biological father. The silence that followed was deafening. Bruce felt dizzy with relief, not because Jimmy was his father, but because now they couldn't take away his mother's treatment. Rose stood abruptly, her face pale. I need some air, she whispered, hurrying from the room. Jimmy took a step toward Bruce, then stopped, uncertainty written across his features. I need to process this, he said, following Rose. Left alone with his mother and Dr. Matthews, Bruce felt the weight of what had just happened settle over him. He wasn't just a street kid anymore, he was Jimmy Sterling's son. The implications of that truth were both thrilling and terrifying. "She's improving," Dr. Matthews said kindly, checking Chloe's charts. "The medication is doing its job. She should wake up soon." But soon seemed an eternity as the hours crawled by. Bruce dozed in his chair, exhausted from the day's events, only to be startled awake by the sound of voices in the hallway. "I can't do this," Jimmy Rose was saying, her voice thick with tears. "I can't watch another child infiltrate our lives, whether he's yours or not." And his mother, "Do you expect me to welcome the woman you loved before me?" "Rose, please. They need help." "And what about what I need?" Rose's voice cracked. "I've spent years trying to give you a child, enduring treatment after treatment, only to have this boy appear from nowhere. Do you know how that feels?" Bruce's chest tightened with guilt. He hadn't known about Rose's inability to have children. The pain in her voice made him understand her resistance in a new light. "I'll leave," he heard himself say, stepping into the hallway. Both adults turned to stare at him. "Once Mum is better, we'll go. I promise. I don't want to ruin your marriage." Jimmy shook his head. "Bruce, no." "Yes," Bruce insisted, fighting back tears. "Mum and I have managed on our own before. We can do it again. I just needed help saving her. That's all I wanted." Rose's expression softened slightly, seeing the genuine pain in the boy's eyes. But before she could respond, a commotion from Chloe's room drew their attention. "Doctor, she's waking up," a nurse called. Bruce ran back to his mother's bedside, his heart leaping as her eyelids fluttered. Jimmy followed, while Rose hung back in the doorway, her own internal struggle visible on her face. Chloe's eyes opened slowly, focusing first on Bruce, then drifting to Jimmy. Recognition flickered across her features, followed by confusion and fear. "Jimmy," she whispered, her voice weak. "Why? How?" "Mom," Bruce squeezed her hand. "I found him. I had to. You were so sick." Understanding dawned in Chloe's eyes, followed by panic. She tried to sit up, setting off various monitor alarms. "No, we have to go. Bruce, we can't be here. We can't afford." "It's taken care of," Jimmy said quietly, stepping forward. "Everything's been paid for, Chloe. You're going to be fine." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted this. I never meant for you to find out like this. I'm so sorry." From the doorway, Rose watched the scene unfold: the desperate mother, the confused father, the boy who had brought them together. Her own pain warred with her growing understanding of the complexity of the situation. As medical staff rushed in to check on Chloe, Bruce found himself pushed to the side. He ended up next to Rose, both of them observers to the reunion neither had expected. "I really didn't know who you were when I helped you," Bruce said quietly. "And I didn't know about you wanting children. I'm sorry." Rose looked down at him, seeing not a threat, but a child who had moved heaven and earth to save his mother. "I know," she replied softly. "That's what makes it harder." The monitors steadied as Chloe calmed down, but the emotional tension in the room remained high. They had passed the point of no return. The truth was out. Relationships were forever altered, and none of them could predict what would happen next. Bruce looked between the adults, his dying mother, his newfound father, and the stepmother who feared him, and realized that saving his mother's life was just the beginning of their challenges. The real test would be figuring out how to move forward without destroying the lives they'd built. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over the city, promising a new day, but whether it would bring healing or heartbreak remained to be seen. Night shifts at the hospital had a different rhythm, a quieter intensity that Amanda, the veteran night nurse, knew well. She watched Bruce curled up in the uncomfortable chair beside his mother's bed, his young face troubled even in sleep. Against protocol, she'd been sneaking him extra blankets and food from the staff room. "Poor child," she whispered to her colleague Maria. 8 years old and carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Maria glanced at the sleeping boy, then at the expensive equipment surrounding Chloe. "Did you hear? Mr. Sterling's wife is demanding proof that the boy's story is real, beyond just the DNA test. She thinks it's all too convenient." Convenient, Amanda scoffed quietly. "I've watched that child sell candy at traffic lights for months, trying to save money for his mother's medicine. There's nothing convenient about desperation." Outside the hospital, Mr. Chen stood in his empty convenience store, remembering how Bruce would help stock shelves for a few dollars and leftover sandwiches. He'd seen the news about Jimmy Sterling's newly discovered son. The headlines were everywhere. Picking up his phone, he dialed a number. "Daily Tribune? Yes, I have a story about Bruce, Mr. Sterling's son. But not what you think. Let me tell you about a boy who worked harder than any adult I know." Meanwhile, in the Sterling mansion, Rose sat in her private study, surrounded by papers, the results of her private investigation into Chloe's past. What she found wasn't what she'd expected: hospital records showing Chloe's attempts to contact Jimmy during her pregnancy, letters returned unopened, and most surprisingly, evidence that Jimmy's mother had intercepted these communications. "Oh, Jimmy," Rose whispered, her hand trembling as she held a 9-year-old letter addressed to Jimmy in Chloe's handwriting. "You really didn't know." Back at the hospital, Bruce woke to find Mrs. Thompson, his teacher, standing in the doorway. Her eyes were kind as she approached, carrying his homework and something else, a worn shoebox. "The kids in class made this for your mom," she said softly, opening the box to reveal handmade get well cards. "They miss you, Bruce. Even the ones who used to tease you." Bruce fingered the cards, throat tight with emotion. "Thank you," he managed. Mrs. Thompson sat beside him. "There's something else you should know. When I heard about your situation, I looked through old school records." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "9 years ago, your mother was my student too, Bruce. She was top of her class, headed to nursing school on a scholarship. Then she disappeared. Now I understand why." Bruce looked at his sleeping mother, trying to imagine her as a young student with dreams of becoming a nurse. "She gave everything up for me," he realized aloud. "Yes," Mrs. Thompson agreed. "And now it's time for others to help carry that weight." In the hospital corridor, Jimmy paced, his phone buzzing constantly with messages from his board of directors. The media was having a field day with the story and shareholders were nervous. But for the first time in his successful life, business seemed secondary. He paused at Chloe's door, watching Bruce with the teacher. The boy's gentle manner, his quiet strength. Jimmy saw his own mother in those traits, along with Chloe's determination. DNA tests aside, there was no denying this was his son. Mr. Sterling, a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Amanda, the night nurse. "There's something you should know about your son." She told him about Bruce's months of selling candy, about finding him sleeping in storage rooms to be near his mother, about his refusal to give up hope even when everyone else had. With each story, Jimmy felt the weight of those lost years more keenly. Meanwhile, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had often watched Bruce after school, made her way through the hospital carrying a container of homemade soup. She encountered Rose in the elevator. "Ah, you must be Mrs. Sterling," she said, her accent thick but her eyes sharp. "I helped raise that boy you're so afraid of. Let me tell you what kind of child he really is." By the time they reached Chloe's floor, Rose's mascara was smudged from tears, and her understanding of Bruce had shifted dramatically. As the day progressed, more people arrived, Mr. Chen, with proper food for Bruce, former customers who'd bought his candy, even the security guard who'd caught him sleeping in the mall. Each brought a story, a memory, a piece of Bruce's struggle that painted a picture Rose couldn't ignore. In her room, Chloe drifted in and out of consciousness, but each time she woke, Bruce was there. During one lucid moment, she noticed the cards. "What are these?" she asked weakly. "Your fan club," Bruce smiled. "Turns out we're not as alone as we thought." Jimmy entered then, carrying coffee and a stack of papers. His eyes met Chloe's, and decades of unspoken words passed between them. "I found your letters," he said quietly. "My mother. She kept them from me. All this time I never knew." Chloe closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I tried so hard to reach you. Then, when I saw you'd married Rose in the papers, I thought you'd chosen to ignore us." "I would never." Jimmy's voice broke. "Chloe, if I'd known about Bruce." "I know," she whispered. "I know that now." Bruce watched this exchange, feeling the years of pain and misunderstanding finally beginning to heal. But one person was still missing from this reconciliation. Rose stood in the doorway, clutching a photograph, not the one Bruce had shown Jimmy, but an older one she'd found in her investigation. It showed a teenage Chloe and Jimmy at a school dance, their whole lives ahead of them. "I thought you were trying to destroy my family," Rose said, her voice thick with emotion. "But you were trying to save yours." She moved to Bruce's side, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I was wrong about you, both of you." The moment was interrupted by Dr. Matthews arriving with Chloe's latest test results. "The medication is working," he announced. "Mrs. Walker will make a full recovery." The relief in the room was palpable, but it also brought new questions to the surface. What would happen once Chloe was released? Where would they go? How would this newfound family navigate their relationships? Bruce felt the tension return as these unspoken questions filled the air. He looked at the adults around him, his mother, finally getting the treatment she needed, his father, successful but carrying the weight of past mistakes, and Rose, whose journey from antagonist to ally had been the most surprising of all. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "we'll figure it out together." Rose knelt beside him, her previous hostility replaced with understanding. "Yes, we will. Family is complicated, Bruce. Sometimes it breaks, sometimes it heals. And sometimes it grows in ways we never expected." Jimmy placed a hand on both their shoulders while Chloe watched from her bed, tears of gratitude shining in her eyes. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they had taken the first steps toward healing. Outside the room, Amanda smiled as she updated Chloe's charts. In her years of nursing, she'd seen many families torn apart by secrets and lies. But occasionally, very occasionally, she got to witness them being put back together. The evening sun cast long shadows through the hospital windows, but for the first time in years, those shadows didn't seem so dark. They had all been changed by this experience, not just Bruce and his immediate family, but everyone whose lives had been touched by a little boy's determination to save his mother. In the end, it wasn't just Chloe who was healing. They all were, in their own ways, learning that family isn't always what you're born into. Sometimes it's what you build, one act of kindness at a time. The calm that had settled over Chloe's hospital room was shattered by the sudden, harsh sound of alarms. Bruce, who had been dozing in his chair, jerked awake to see his mother convulsing, her body rigid against the white sheets. "Mum," he cried, reaching for her hand, just as medical staff burst into the room. "Status epilepticus 1," doctor barked. "Push 2 mg of lorazepam stat." Bruce found himself backed against the wall, watching helplessly as doctors and nurses swarmed around his mother's bed. The specialized medication that had been working so well now seemed powerless against this new crisis. Jimmy and Rose rushed in, having been down in the cafeteria. "What's happening?" Jimmy demanded, his face pale. "Her body's rejecting the treatment," Dr. Matthews explained tersely, not taking his eyes off his patient. "We need to try something else, something stronger." "Whatever it costs," Jimmy started, but Dr. Matthews cut him off. "It's not about money now, Mr. Sterling. The medication we need is experimental. There are risks." The word risks hung in the air like a death sentence. Bruce felt his knees go weak, and Rose instinctively reached out to steady him. "Do it," Bruce said firmly, surprising everyone with the authority in his young voice. Mom would want to try. As the medical team worked to stabilize Chloe, another crisis was unfolding outside the hospital. News vans had gathered, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like metal flowers searching for sun. The story had leaked Jimmy Sterling's secret son and dying ex-lover, now receiving cutting-edge treatment at his expense. "Mr. Sterling," his PR director's voice crackled through his phone, "the board is calling an emergency meeting. Your company's stock is dropping. We need you here now." Jimmy looked at Chloe's pale face, at Bruce's terrified eyes, at Rose's conflicted expression. "The board can wait," he said firmly, ending the call. But the outside world wouldn't wait. Social media was exploding with theories and accusations. Old photos of Jimmy and Chloe surfaced, along with speculation about Bruce's legitimacy, despite the DNA test. Worse, someone had leaked Rose's medical records, revealing her struggles with infertility. "How dare they?" Rose whispered, her phone lighting up with notification after notification. Our private pain turned into public entertainment. The pressure reached its breaking point that evening. Rose's mother called, her voice sharp with disapproval. "Darling, you need to protect yourself. Get out now before this scandal ruins you too. Let Jimmy deal with his mistakes alone." Rose stood in the hospital corridor, torn between her instinct for self-preservation and the unexpected connection she'd formed with Bruce. Looking through the window, she saw him holding his mother's hand, speaking softly to her unconscious form. "I can't abandon them," she told her mother. "Not now." "Then you're a fool," her mother snapped. "That boy and his mother will destroy everything you've built. Mark my words." The words hit Rose harder than she expected. Seeds of doubt, so recently uprooted, began to take root again. She watched as Jimmy tenderly adjusted Chloe's pillow, saw the gentleness in his eyes, a gentleness she'd thought was reserved for her alone. Bruce, sensitive to the undercurrents of adult emotion, noticed Rose's growing distress. He found her later in the hospital chapel, crying quietly. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I never meant to hurt anyone." Rose looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. "I know you didn't, Bruce, but sometimes good intentions aren't enough. This situation, it's tearing everything apart." "We could leave," Bruce offered, his heart breaking even as he said it. "Once Mom's stable, we could go away. You could have your life back." "Could I?" Rose's laugh was bitter. "Nothing will ever be the same now. Jimmy's your father. That won't change whether you're here or not." Before Bruce could respond, his phone buzzed a text from Amanda. "The night nurse, come quickly. Your mother needs you." They rushed back to find Chloe in crisis again. The experimental treatment was causing unexpected complications. Her body temperature was spiking dangerously high, and her kidneys were showing signs of failure. "We need to stop the treatment," Dr. Matthews announced grimly. "But without it—" "She'll die," Bruce finished, his voice hollow. Jimmy pulled Dr. Matthews aside, his voice urgent. "There must be other options. Money is no object. We can fly in specialists from anywhere in the world. But medical science, even backed by unlimited resources, sometimes meets its match in the complexity of the human body." As the night wore on, Chloe's condition continued to deteriorate. Bruce sat by her bed, holding her hand, feeling more helpless than when they'd been poor and alone. All the money in the world, his newfound father's influence, none of it seemed enough to keep his mother with him. Rose watched from the doorway, her own crisis forgotten in the face of this greater tragedy. She saw Jimmy's desperation, Bruce's quiet agony, and made a decision that would change everything. "I need to speak with both of you," she said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Privately." In the small consultation room, Rose faced her husband and her stepson. "I'm leaving," she announced. Not because I don't care, but because I care too much. This situation needs all of your attention, Jimmy. You can't be torn between your dying ex-lover and your wife's feelings. Rose, no, Jimmy protested, but she held up her hand. Let me finish. I'm not leaving forever. I just need time. Time to process, to accept, to understand my place in this new reality. And you need time to focus on saving Chloe and being there for Bruce without worrying about me. Bruce listened, tears streaming down his face. Once again, his presence was tearing a family apart. Please don't go, he begged, not because of us. Rose knelt before him, taking his small hands in hers. Bruce, sometimes leaving is an act of love. Sometimes it's the only way to make space for healing. She looked up at Jimmy. You understand, don't you? Jimmy's face was a mask of pain, but he nodded slowly. I understand. But Rose, you're still my wife. This doesn't have to be the end. No, she agreed, standing, but it needs to be a pause. A chance for all of us to figure out who we are now and what we want to become. As Rose gathered her things to leave, the monitors in Chloe's room began screaming again. The night's crises weren't over yet. They were about to face their darkest hour. Bruce ran back to his mother's room, his heart pounding. Behind him, he heard Rose's heels clicking on the hospital floor as she walked away, and Jimmy's footsteps running to catch up with him. The world seemed to be falling apart in slow motion, and he didn't know how to stop it. Dr. Matthews' face was grim as they entered the room. We need to make a decision, he said, and we need to make it now. We need to make a decision now, Dr. Matthews repeated, his voice heavy with urgency. The experimental treatment we've been using is causing severe complications. We have two choices: continue and risk immediate organ failure, or stop and hope her body can recover on its own. The silence in the room was deafening. Bruce stood frozen, his small hand clutching his mother's limp one, while Jimmy paced nervously by the window. Rose had just announced her departure, but even she remained rooted to the spot, the gravity of the moment overriding her earlier decision to leave. What? What are her chances? Bruce's voice trembled. If we stop the treatment? Dr. Matthews' face softened with compassion. Without treatment, maybe 20%. With it, he hesitated. The risk of fatal complications is over 80%. Jimmy stepped forward, his business instincts kicking in. There must be other options, other treatments, other hospitals. We don't have time for transfers or consultations, Dr. Matthews cut in. Her organs are failing now. We need to decide continue or stop. Bruce felt the weight of the decision crushing him. He looked at his mother's pale face, remembering all the time she had made impossible choices to protect him. Now it was his turn, and he felt completely unprepared. I can't lose her, he whispered. Please, I can't. Suddenly, Rose spoke up. Wait, there's something you all need to know. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking slightly. I've been doing some research about Chloe's condition, about similar cases. She took a deep breath. There's a doctor in Chicago who's had success with a different approach. Less aggressive, but more sustainable. Jimmy turned sharply. Why didn't you mention this before? Because I was angry, Rose admitted, tears forming in her eyes. I was so focused on protecting our marriage that I almost let my jealousy cost someone their life. She looked at Bruce, her voice breaking. Can you ever forgive me? Before Bruce could respond, the monitors started screaming. Chloe's body began convulsing violently, sending medical staff rushing into the room. She's crashing, someone shouted. Get them out of here. But Bruce refused to move, his voice rising above the chaos. No, I won't leave her. Mom, please fight. Please don't leave me. Jimmy tried to pull him away, but Bruce fought like a wild thing. Let me stay. She needs me. Mom always said we're stronger together. In that moment of crisis, something extraordinary happened. Rose, who had been heading for the door, turned back. Instead of leaving, She wrapped her arms around Bruce from behind, her own tears falling freely. "You're right," she whispered in his ear. "You're absolutely right. We're stronger together, all of us." Jimmy joined them, forming a protective circle around Bruce as the medical team worked frantically to stabilize Chloe. The three of them stood there, former adversaries united in their desperate hope for a miracle. Dr. Matthews barked orders, his calm professionalism masking his own emotional investment in this case. He had seen many patients over the years, but something about this family's story had touched him deeply. "Come on, Chloe," he muttered as he worked. "Your boy needs you. Your whole family needs you." Minutes stretched like hours. The monitors continued their ominous beeping, marking each precious heartbeat, each struggle for breath. Bruce prayed harder than he ever had before, his words a jumbled mixture of pleas and promises. Finally, the convulsions stopped. The room grew quiet except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Dr. Matthews straightened up, his face showing both exhaustion and surprise. "She's stabilizing," he announced, checking the readings again. "I don't understand how, but her vitals are actually improving." Bruce sagged against Rose, who still held him tightly. Jimmy gripped both their shoulders, his own tears falling unchecked. "What does this mean?" Bruce asked, hardly daring to hope. "It means," Dr. Matthews said slowly, "that your mother is fighting back." And maybe he paused, looking at the unlikely family unit before him. Maybe she's not fighting alone anymore. Rose wiped her eyes, decision made. "I'm not leaving," she announced firmly. "I was wrong to even think about it. Whatever happens, we face it together." Jimmy pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Thank you," he whispered. Bruce looked between them, then back at his mother. Something had shifted in that moment of crisis, a healing that went beyond the physical. They weren't just random people thrown together by circumstance anymore. They were becoming something more, a real family, forged in the fire of near tragedy. Dr. Matthews watched them with a small smile, understanding that he had just witnessed something rare and precious, the moment when love overcame fear, when truth defeated doubt, when a family was truly born. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of hope. The worst of the crisis had passed, but its impact would resonate far beyond this hospital room. In choosing to stay, in choosing to fight together, they had all been transformed. And Chloe, though still unconscious, seemed to sense the change. Her vital signs continued to improve, defying medical explanation, but confirming what Bruce had always known, that love, real love, could work miracles. As Bruce stood there, watching his world hang in the balance, he turned to face you, his eyes filled with emotion. "You know, in moments like these, when everything seems to be falling apart, it's the support of others that keeps us going. Just like I never gave up fighting for my mom, these storytellers never give up bringing powerful stories to you. If you've been moved by our journey, please subscribe to this channel. Each subscription is like a small light in the darkness, helping these meaningful stories reach more hearts. Together we can make sure voices like ours are heard. Thank you for being part of our story." "We're losing her," Dr. Matthews announced, his voice cutting through the chaos of beeping monitors and rushing medical staff. "The experimental treatment has caused massive organ failure. Her body can't take much more." Bruce stood frozen, watching as his mother's life slipped away despite all the expensive equipment surrounding her. The machines that had given him hope just hours ago now seemed to mock him with their urgent alarms. "There has to be something we can do," Jimmy insisted, his face ashen. "Any treatment, any specialist." Dr. Matthews shook his head grimly. "There's one possibility, but it's extremely risky. A new experimental protocol from Europe." However, he hesitated, looking at Bruce. However, what Bruce demanded, his voice surprisingly steady despite his terror. "The treatment costs are astronomical, even by our standards. More importantly, there's only a 30% chance of success. And if it fails," the doctor's voice trailed off. She dies anyway, Bruce finished, understanding the unspoken words. He looked at his mother's pale face, remembering all the times she'd fought to give him a better life. We have to try. Jimmy stepped forward, checkbook already in hand, but the doctor raised his hand to stop him. There's more, he said heavily. We have another patient, a 12-year-old girl with the same condition. She's been waiting for this treatment for months. We only have enough of the medication for one patient. The weight of this revelation settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Bruce felt his world tilting on its axis as he understood the cruel choice before them. How? How long has she been waiting, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. 6 months, Dr. Matthews replied. Her name is Sarah. She's been here since Christmas. Bruce walked to the window, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. Below, the city continued its nighttime rhythm, unaware of the moral crisis unfolding in this sterile room. Bruce, Jimmy started, we don't have to. Is she here? Bruce interrupted, still facing the window. Sarah. Dr. Matthews nodded. 4th floor. Pediatric wing. Without a word, Bruce walked out of the room. Jimmy moved to follow, but Dr. Matthews held him back. Let him go, the doctor said softly. Some decisions need to be made alone. Bruce found the pediatric wing easily enough. The walls here were painted with cheerful murals, a stark contrast to the grief in his heart. Through a window, he saw a young girl sitting up in bed, reading a book. An IV drip hung beside her, and her face was pale, but she was smiling as she turned the pages. A woman sat beside her mother, Bruce guessed. She looked exhausted but happy, running her fingers through her daughter's hair as she read. The scene was so familiar it made his chest ache. That's Sarah, a nurse said quietly, noticing Bruce's attention. She loves reading about adventures, says it helps her forget she's sick. Does she know, Bruce asked, about the treatment? The nurse shook her head. We didn't want to give her false hope. The cost alone made it impossible for her family. Bruce watched as Sarah's mother kissed her forehead, saw the love between them that mirrored his relationship with Chloe. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. Sometimes love means putting others first, Bruce, even when it hurts. When he returned to his mother's room, his decision was written on his face. Jimmy saw it and understood immediately. Bruce, no, he protested. We can find another way. I'll fund research, develop more of the treatment. How long would that take? Bruce asked quietly. Sarah's been waiting 6 months already. She might not have time for research. He took a deep breath. Mom would want her to have the treatment. But your mother. My mother taught me that doing the right thing isn't always easy, Bruce said, his voice cracking. She worked 3 jobs so I could go to school. She went hungry so I could eat. Everything she did was to help others, to make me a better person. He looked at Chloe's unconscious form. I can't dishonor that by being selfish now. Dr. Matthews watched this exchange with growing respect. Bruce, are you sure? Once we make this decision? I'm sure, Bruce nodded, tears finally falling. Give Sarah the treatment, please. Just keep my mom comfortable for as long as possible. The doctor placed a gentle hand on Bruce's shoulder. You're making an incredibly brave choice, son. One your mother would be proud of. Jimmy pulled Bruce into a tight embrace, his own tears falling freely. I just found you both, he whispered. I can't lose her like this. We won't lose her, Bruce said, trying to sound confident. Mom's strong. She's always been strong. Maybe there's still hope. But as the night wore on, hope seemed increasingly distant. Chloe's vital signs continued to weaken, and each breath seemed more labored than the last. Bruce never left her side, holding her hand, telling her stories about their life together, desperate to keep her connected to this world. In the pediatric wing, Sarah received the first dose of the treatment, unaware of the sacrifice that made it possible. Her mother's prayers of gratitude mixed with Bruce's prayers for a miracle, rising into the hospital's quiet night. Rose, who had been about to leave the hospital, heard about Bruce's decision. She stood in the doorway of Chloe's room, watching the boy who had chosen to save a stranger rather than his own mother. "I was so wrong about you," she whispered, more to herself than to Bruce, "so terribly wrong." As dawn approached, Chloe's condition deteriorated further. The monitors told a story of failing organs and weakening vital signs. Dr. Matthews prepared them for the worst. "She's fighting," he said gently, "but her body can't sustain this much longer. You should say your goodbyes." Bruce climbed onto the bed beside his mother, careful not to disturb the tubes and wires keeping her alive. He laid his head on her shoulder the way he used to do when she read him bedtime stories. "Mom," he whispered, "I need you to know something. I made a choice tonight, I think. I think it's what you would have done. There's a girl named Sarah, and she needed help more than we did. I hope you're proud of me. I hope you understand." Jimmy watched from the doorway, his heart breaking for the son he'd just found and the woman he'd lost so many years ago. Behind him, Rose had returned, unable to leave in this darkest hour. As the sun began to rise over the city, casting long shadows through the hospital windows, Bruce held his mother's hand and waited. The monitors continued their ominous beeping, counting down moments he wasn't ready to lose. In another room, Sarah slept peacefully, the treatment coursing through her veins, bringing hope to her family. But in Chloe's room, hope seemed to be slipping away with each passing second. The crisis that had begun with Bruce's desperate search for help now seemed to be ending in tragedy. Despite all their efforts, despite Jimmy's wealth, despite Bruce's sacrifice. As morning light crept into the room, they could only watch and wait, powerless against the failing of Chloe's body. Dr. Matthews checked the monitors one last time, his face grave. "I'm so sorry," he began, but before he could finish, something unexpected happened, something that would change everything. The monitors surrounding Chloe suddenly erupted in a cacophony of alarms. Her body began to convulse violently, the machines recording a cascade of failing vital signs. "Code Blue," Dr. Matthews shouted, launching into emergency procedures. "Get him out of here." A nurse tried to pull Bruce away, but he fought against her grip. "No, Mom, please, I need to stay with her." Jimmy lifted Bruce bodily from the room as the crash team rushed in, their voices urgent and professional. Through the window, Bruce watched them begin chest compressions, saw the paddles being prepared for defibrillation. Clear, the sound of his mother's body jerking with electrical current would haunt his nightmares forever. Rose appeared beside them, her face streaked with tears. She'd been about to leave the hospital but couldn't bring herself to go, not like this. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around Bruce as he struggled against Jimmy's hold. One more time. Clear. Bruce buried his face in Rose's shoulder, unable to watch. The sounds told their own story, the flat tone of the heart monitor, the increasingly desperate efforts of the medical team, the diminishing hope in Dr. Matthews' voice as he called for another round of medication. Then, through the chaos, a new sound emerged, rapid footsteps approaching. Sarah's mother appeared, breathless and distraught. "Is it true?" she demanded. "Did you give up the treatment for Sarah? For my daughter?" Bruce nodded mutely, still held between Jimmy and Rose. Sarah's mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Why? Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because," Bruce's voice cracked, "my mum taught me that love means helping others, even when it hurts." The woman rushed forward, embracing Bruce fiercely. "Sarah's responding to the treatment. Her numbers are improving. You saved my baby girl." But the bitter irony of saving one life while losing another was too much for Bruce to bear. He collapsed against Rose, his small body racked with sobs. Inside the room, Dr. Matthews was still fighting. "Come on," Chloe muttered, administering another dose of medication. "Your boy needs you." The minutes stretched like hours. Bruce had never felt so helpless, not even when they were homeless and hungry. All the money in the world, his father's influence, his own sacrifice, none of it seemed enough to keep his mother with him. Sarah's mother remained with them, holding Bruce's hand as they waited. The weight of his decision pressed down on him with each passing moment. Had he chosen wrong? Should he have been selfish, kept the treatment for his mother? "Bruce," Sarah's mother said softly, "Sarah's asking for you. She knows what you did. Would you? Would you like to meet her?" Bruce looked uncertainly at Jimmy, who nodded encouragingly. Together they walked to Sarah's room, leaving Rose to watch over Chloe. Sarah was sitting up in bed, her cheeks showing the first hint of color they'd had in months. When she saw Bruce, her eyes filled with tears. "You gave up your mum's medicine for me?" she asked quietly. Bruce nodded, unable to speak. "But why? You don't even know me." Because Bruce managed, sometimes doing the right thing is more important than doing the easy thing. Sarah reached for his hand. "Then we'll pray for your mum together. Maybe God will see how good you are and send a miracle." Back in Chloe's room, Rose watched the medical team continue their efforts. She thought about all her assumptions about Bruce and Chloe, about the jealousy that had driven her initial rejection. Now, witnessing this child's incredible sacrifice, she felt ashamed of her earlier behavior. The monitors continued their ominous beeping, marking each moment that Chloe's life hung in the balance. Dr. Matthews worked tirelessly, refusing to give up on the woman who had raised such an extraordinary son. "Mrs. Sterling," he called to Rose, "we need to make a decision. We can keep trying, but at this point we're just prolonging the inevitable." Rose looked at Chloe's pale face, thinking of all the years this woman had sacrificed everything for her son. The same son who had just made an impossible choice to save a stranger's child. "Keep trying," Rose said firmly. "Bruce gave up his chance to save his mother. The least we can do is fight as hard as we can." As if in response to her words, one of the monitors changed its tone. Dr. Matthews rushed to check the readings, his expression shifting from resignation to surprise. "This is impossible," he muttered, double-checking the numbers. "Her stats are..." Before he could finish his sentence, Bruce and Jimmy returned with Sarah's mother. One look at the doctor's face told them something had changed. "What's happening?" Bruce asked, his voice small and frightened. Dr. Matthews turned to them, his expression bewildered. "I can't explain it, but your mother's numbers are stabilizing. It's as if..." As if what Jimmy demanded. As if her body is healing itself. "I've never seen anything like it." Bruce rushed to his mother's bedside, grabbing her hand. It felt warmer than before, and he could have sworn he felt a slight pressure as her fingers curled around his. Sarah's mother crossed herself, whispering a prayer of thanks. Rose and Jimmy exchanged shocked glances, while Dr. Matthews continued to monitor the improving vital signs. But they all knew they weren't out of danger yet. Chloe's condition, while mysteriously improving, was still critical. The next few hours would determine everything. As they settled in to wait, Bruce held his mother's hand and whispered, "I tried to be the person you taught me to be, Mom. Please don't leave me. Please fight." The monitors beeped steadily, marking each precious moment of Chloe's unexpected battle back from the brink. Outside, the sun was rising on a new day, bringing with it either the greatest miracle of Bruce's life or its deepest tragedy. Only time would tell which way fate would turn. As dawn broke over the hospital, Rose found herself alone in Jimmy's office, surrounded by old boxes his secretary had delivered from storage. She'd been searching for insurance documents, but instead found something far more significant: a stack of unopened letters, all addressed to Jimmy, all from Chloe. The first letter was dated 9 years ago. "Dear Jimmy, Bay. I've tried calling, but your mother says you're unreachable. I need to tell you something important. I'm pregnant. Rose's hands trembled as she read letter after letter. Each one detailed Chloe's attempts to reach Jimmy, her growing desperation as his mother intercepted every communication. Your mother says you're engaged now. She says you don't want anything to do with me or the baby. I don't believe it, Jimmy. The man I knew wouldn't. The final letter broke her heart. I won't try again after this. Your mother made it clear you've moved on. I'll raise our child alone. All I ask is that you're happy. Bruce will never know about the father who didn't want him. Oh my God, Rose whispered, suddenly understanding everything. She grabbed her phone, dialing Jimmy's mother's number. The older woman answered on the first ring. Rose, darling, I saw the news. That woman and her boy are destroying everything we. How could you? Rose interrupted, her voice shaking with fury. You intercepted every letter. You lied to both of them. There was a long pause before Jimmy's mother spoke again, her voice cold. I did what was necessary. Jimmy was finally becoming successful. He was engaged to you, a proper match. I couldn't let some gold digger and her bastard child ruin everything. But gold digger, Rose laughed bitterly. Chloe worked 3 jobs to support her son. She never asked for a penny. She just wanted Jimmy to know he had a child. What's done is done, the older woman said dismissively. Why dig up ancient history? Because that history is fighting for her life right now, Rose snapped. And your grandson, yes, your grandson, just gave up his mother's chance at treatment to save another child's life. That's the kind of person he became, no thanks to you. Grabbing the letters, Rose rushed back to the hospital. She found Jimmy in the chapel, his head bowed in prayer. You need to see these, she said, thrusting the letters at him. Your mother. She kept these from you. All of them? Jimmy read through the letters, his face growing paler with each page. She knew, he whispered. She knew about Bruce from the beginning. She let them struggle alone all these years. There's more, Rose said quietly. She pulled out her phone, showing him the results of her private investigation. Chloe tried everything to contact you. She even came to your office once, but your mother had security escort her out. She told them Chloe was a stalker. Jimmy's hands clenched into fists. I never knew. All these years, I could have been there for them. Meanwhile, in Chloe's room, Bruce sat with Sarah, who'd insisted on visiting despite her own weakness. She held his hand as they watched Chloe's vital signs continue their mysterious improvement. My mum says angels must be watching over her, Sarah said softly. Because you did something so good, they're doing something good back. Bruce managed a small smile. I just wish. He was interrupted by commotion in the hallway. Jimmy burst into the room, followed by Rose, both of their faces flushed with emotion. Bruce, Jimmy's voice cracked. I need to tell you something. About why I wasn't there for you and your mother. He showed Bruce the letters, explaining everything: his mother's deception, Chloe's attempts to reach him, the years of manufactured silence. She tried so hard to tell me about you, Jimmy said, tears streaming down his face. She never gave up until she thought I'd rejected you both. Bruce stared at the letters, recognizing his mother's handwriting. He remembered finding her crying over old photographs, now understanding the depth of her pain. All this time, he whispered, she thought you didn't want us. I would have wanted you both, Jimmy assured him fiercely, if I'd known. God, I would have moved heaven and earth to be with you. Sarah squeezed Bruce's hand supportively as he processed this revelation. That's why Mum never told me about you until she got sick, he realized. She thought she was protecting me from rejection. Rose stepped forward, her own eyes wet. Your mother loved you so much, Bruce. She fought the whole world to give you a good life. And now we know she fought my mother-in-law too. Just then, Dr. Matthews entered with new test results. His face showed shock and disbelief. This is unprecedented, he announced. Chloe's body isn't just stabilizing, it's healing itself. The organ damage is reversing. It's as if what Bruce asked eagerly. As if her will to live is stronger than any medicine we could give her. The doctor shook his head in amazement. In all my years of practice, I've never seen anything like this. Sarah's mother, who had been standing quietly in the doorway, spoke up. It's because love is stronger than medicine sometimes. Bruce's sacrifice, the truth coming out. Maybe that's what she was waiting for. As if to confirm these words, Chloe's fingers twitched in Bruce's grasp. Her eyelids fluttered, and slowly, impossibly, she opened her eyes. "Bruce," she whispered weakly. The room fell silent as mother and son locked eyes. Bruce climbed carefully onto the bed, mindful of the tubes and wires. "Mom," he sobbed, burying his face in her shoulder, "you came back." Chloe's gaze moved from Bruce to Jimmy, who stood frozen by her bedside. Recognition and old pain flickered in her eyes. "He knows," Chloe Rose said gently. "He knows everything now." As the truth settled over the room, they all realized this was just the beginning. There were years of pain to heal, relationships to rebuild, and a family to reconstruct from the ashes of deception. But for now, they had this miracle: Chloe awake, Bruce's sacrifice rewarded, and the truth finally set free after 9 long years. As Chloe regained strength over the next few days, the dynamics in the hospital room shifted dramatically. Rose, who had initially planned to leave, found herself drawn back repeatedly, watching the interactions between mother and son with new eyes. One afternoon, she overheard Bruce telling Chloe about his decision to give up the treatment for Sarah. "I'm so proud of you," Chloe whispered, stroking his hair. "You have such a beautiful heart." "I learned it from you, Mum," Bruce replied. "All those times you helped others, even when we had nothing." Rose slipped away quietly, tears in her eyes. In her car, she pulled out her phone and made a call she'd been avoiding. "Mother," she said firmly when Jimmy's mother answered, "I'm cutting ties with you. What you did to Chloe and Bruce, I can't be associated with that kind of cruelty." "Don't be dramatic," Rose, the older woman, scoffed. "Everything I did was to protect our family's reputation." "No," Rose countered. "Everything you did was about control and prejudice. That boy you rejected, he gave up his mother's life-saving treatment to help a stranger. He has more nobility in his little finger than you have in your entire body." Meanwhile, Jimmy was undergoing his own transformation. He'd moved into the hospital, working remotely from a makeshift office in the family waiting room. His priorities had shifted dramatically. Board meetings were rescheduled around Bruce's school hours, and business calls were cut short when Chloe needed anything. One evening, his assistant brought an urgent contract requiring his immediate attention. "It's a billion-dollar deal," so she explained anxiously. "The board is waiting." Jimmy glanced at Bruce, who was helping Chloe with her physical therapy exercises, both of them laughing at some private joke. "Tell them to wait," he said simply. "Some things are more important than money." The most surprising transformation, however, came from Sarah. As she recovered, she became a regular visitor to Chloe's room, often bringing books to read with Bruce. Her innocence and gratitude touched everyone, but it was her insight that proved most profound. "You know what I think," she said one day, while Bruce helped her with homework. "I think God made your mom get better because you were willing to give up everything to help me. Like in those stories where the hero has to prove they're worthy." Bruce considered this. "But I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted to help." "Exactly," Sarah smiled. "That's what made it special." The truth about Jimmy's mother's deception spread through the hospital staff, adding another layer to the already remarkable story. Amanda, the night nurse who had helped Bruce so many times, finally shared her own secret. "I knew your mother back then," she told Bruce quietly. "I was working at the other hospital when she tried to deliver Jimmy's letters. I saw his mother tear them up without even opening them. I should have done something, said something." You helped us when it mattered most, Bruce assured her, remembering the many nights she'd let him sleep in the storage room. Rose, who overheard this conversation, made a decision. She approached Chloe when they were alone. "I need to apologize," she began. "Not just for doubting Bruce, but for everything. I was so afraid of losing Jimmy that I couldn't see what was right in front of me, a child who needed help, and a mother who had suffered enough." Chloe reached for Rose's hand. "You're here now. That's what matters." "There's something else," Rose added hesitantly. "I can't have children, you probably know that from the media coverage. Watching Bruce, seeing his kindness, his strength, it's made me realize that being a mother isn't about biology, it's about love." Tears slid down both women's faces as they understood each other fully for the first time. The final piece of the transformation puzzle came from Jimmy himself. One morning he gathered everyone in Chloe's room, Bruce, Rose, Sarah and her mother, even Amanda. "I've made some decisions," he announced. "First, I'm stepping down as CEO of Sterling Enterprises. My mother can't hurt anyone else through my company." Gasps filled the room, but he wasn't finished. "Second, I'm establishing a foundation in Bruce's name. It will help single parents with medical expenses and education costs. No one should have to go through what you did, Chloe." Bruce looked at his father in awe. "You're giving up your company. But why?" Jimmy knelt beside his son. "Because some things are more important than success or money. You taught me that, Bruce, you and your mother both." Rose stepped forward, taking Jimmy's hand. "We're all learning from each other," she said softly. "And maybe that's the real miracle here." The transformation wasn't just in the big gestures, though. It was in the small moments too, Rose braiding Sarah's hair while Bruce read to them both, Jimmy falling asleep in the hospital chair with medical journals about Chloe's condition spread across his lap, nurses stopping by with extra treats because Bruce had touched their hearts. Even Dr. Matthews was changed by the experience. "In medicine we're taught to believe in science," he told them. "But what happened here, Chloe's recovery, the timing of everything, it makes me believe in something more." As Chloe grew stronger and the day of her discharge approached, they all realized that while one chapter was ending, another was beginning. They weren't the same people who had entered this crisis. They were stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Bruce, watching his once broken family heal and grow, understood that sometimes the greatest transformations come from the deepest pain. His sacrifice had not only saved Sarah's life, but had somehow saved them all, turning strangers into family and enemies into friends. The truth about Jimmy's mother had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. Now, without her toxic influence, they could finally become the family they were always meant to be. Sarah summed it up best in her innocent way. "See? Angels really were watching. They just didn't look like what we expected." Looking around at his transformed family, Bruce couldn't help but agree. Sometimes angels wore business suits and designer dresses, sometimes they wore nurses' scrubs, and sometimes they were just ordinary people who chose to do extraordinary things. The day Chloe was discharged from the hospital dawned bright and clear. Bruce stood in the doorway of her room, watching as nurses helped her pack the cards, flowers and gifts that had accumulated over her stay. Sarah sat cross-legged on the empty bed, sorting through photos they'd taken together. "Remember this one?" she giggled, holding up a picture of Bruce falling asleep during one of their study sessions, face planted in a textbook. "I was tired," Bruce protested, but he was smiling. The two children had become inseparable, their shared experience creating a bond that transcended their different backgrounds. Jimmy entered, pushing a wheelchair. "Your chariot awaits, my lady," he said to Chloe with a gentle smile. The past weeks had softened the successful businessman, replacing his corporate armor with something more human. "I can walk," Chloe insisted, but everyone could hear the affection in her protest. Hospital policy, Dr. Matthews reminded her, appearing for final checks. "Besides, You'll need your strength for the surprise waiting at home." Bruce's eyes widened. What surprise? "You'll see," Jimmy winked, sharing a knowing look with Rose, who had just arrived carrying coffee for everyone. As they made their way through the hospital corridors, staff members stopped to say goodbye. Amanda, the night nurse, hugged Bruce tightly. "Don't forget us little people when you're living in your mansion," she teased. "Never," Bruce promised seriously. "Your family now too." Outside, a sleek black car waited instead of Jimmy's usual luxury vehicle. "I thought we might want something more comfortable," he explained, helping Chloe into the spacious back seat. The drive took them through familiar neighborhoods, but instead of heading toward Jimmy's mansion, they turned onto a tree-lined street of beautiful but modest homes. "This isn't the way to your house," Bruce noted, confusion evident in his voice. "No," Rose agreed, turning around in her seat. "It's the way to your house." They pulled up in front of a lovely two-story home with a wraparound porch and a small garden. A welcome home banner hung across the front, and Sarah stood on the steps with her mother, waving excitedly. "But..." "How?" Chloe asked, tears forming in her eyes. "It's yours," Jimmy said simply. "Both of yours. Close enough to our home for regular visits, but your own space to build your life together. The basement's been converted into a home office for your new job." "My new job," Chloe repeated, bewildered. Rose stepped forward. "The foundation needs an executive director. Someone who understands what families go through, who can make sure help gets to those who need it most. The board unanimously voted for you." Bruce helped his mother out of the car, both of them overwhelmed by this gesture. But Jimmy wasn't finished. "There's more," he said, leading them inside. The house was fully furnished, warm and welcoming, but it was the study that made Bruce gasp. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, and a beautiful desk sat by the window. "For your homework," Rose explained. "And for the book you're going to write about your experience. People need to hear your story, Bruce." Chloe's room had been specially designed for her recovery, with a comfortable reading nook and a small workspace where she could manage foundation matters from home when needed. Bruce's room was everything a young boy could dream of, including a telescope pointing out a dormer window. "For stargazing," Jimmy said softly. "I used to love astronomy at your age." In the kitchen, they found Mrs. Rodriguez from their old building preparing dinner. "You didn't think I'd let you start your new life without a proper meal, did you?" she asked, hugging them both. Mr. Chen arrived shortly after with dessert, and Mrs. Thompson came bearing books for Bruce's new library. One by one, all the people who had helped them through their hardest times arrived to celebrate their new beginning. Sarah dragged Bruce to show him the backyard, where a treehouse was under construction. "Dad says we can use it as our study spot," she announced, "since we're going to the same school now." Bruce turned to his father in surprise. "Really?" Jimmy nodded. "Sarah's family is moving to this neighborhood too. The foundation is helping them with the transition. After all, she's practically your sister now." As evening fell, the guests departed, leaving the newly expanded family alone. They sat on the porch, watching the sunset, each lost in their own thoughts about the journey that had brought them here. "It's strange," Chloe mused, "how life can change so completely in such a short time." "Good strange or bad strange?" Bruce asked, curled up beside her. "The best kind of strange," she smiled, kissing his forehead. "The kind that reminds you to never lose hope." Rose reached for Jimmy's hand, their matching wedding rings catching the last rays of sunlight. Their marriage, tested by crisis, had emerged stronger, more real somehow. "The whole family isn't what I thought it was," Rose admitted. "It's better. Bigger, more complicated and more beautiful than I ever imagined." As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, Bruce looked at the people around him, his mother, healthy and happy, his father, Finally present in his life, Rose, no longer an adversary, but a friend, Sarah, the sister he never expected to have. The journey that had begun with desperate prayers in a public hospital had led them here, to this porch, this moment, this family. It wasn't perfect, they all knew there would be challenges ahead, but it was real, and it was theirs. Bruce stood up, walking to the porch railing to get a better view of the first evening star. Somehow, he knew this wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. 5 years later, Bruce stood at a podium in the Sterling Foundation's annual gala, now a poised 13-year-old addressing a room full of donors and beneficiaries. Sarah sat in the front row, beaming up at him, her health fully restored. "When I was 8 years old," he began, "I thought love meant sacrifice. I watched my mother sacrifice everything for me, and when the time came, I tried to follow her example by sacrificing our chance at treatment to save Sarah." He paused, emotion thick in his voice. "What I didn't understand then was that love isn't just about sacrifice, it's about multiplication." In the audience, Chloe wiped away tears, remembering those desperate days. She now ran the foundation full-time, turning their experience into hope for thousands of other families. Beside her, Jimmy reached for her hand, a gesture that had become natural over the years. "The love my mother gave me didn't diminish when it was shared with Sarah's family," Bruce continued. "It grew. It didn't decrease when my father and Rose entered our lives, it multiplied. And now, through this foundation, it keeps multiplying, touching more lives than we ever imagined possible." Rose, sitting on Chloe's other side, smiled through her own tears. The woman who had once feared being replaced had found something unexpected, not just a stepson, but a partner in Chloe, a sister in Sarah's mother, and a larger purpose in life. "Last month," Bruce said, his voice strong and clear, "we helped our 1,000th family. But numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is in the mothers who don't have to choose between medicine and food. The real story is in the children who get to keep their parents. The real story is love multiplying." Over and over again. As Bruce spoke, images projected behind him photos of families the foundation had helped, including one of him and Sarah in their treehouse, now a regular meeting spot for the foundation's youth advisory board they'd started together. "Some of you might have read about my grandmother's recent attempt to reconcile," Bruce acknowledged, addressing the elephant in the room. Jimmy's mother had finally reached out, humbled by the foundation's success and her own growing isolation. "We're still working on forgiveness. It's not easy, but we've learned that healing happens in its own time." In the back of the room, Amanda, the night nurse who had helped Bruce so long ago, now headed the foundation's hospital outreach program. Beside her sat Mrs. Thompson, who ran their educational support initiative. Even Mr. Chen had joined the cause, coordinating food assistance for families in crisis. "The miracle wasn't just that my mother survived," Bruce said, nearing his conclusion. "The miracle was that through our darkest time, we discovered a light that could illuminate others' darkness too. Every family we help is an extension of that original miracle." He turned to Sarah, their eyes meeting in shared understanding. "Sometimes angels don't have wings," he smiled, repeating her words from years ago. "Sometimes they look just like us, tired, scared, but willing to help anyway." As Bruce stepped down from the podium, the room erupted in applause. He made his way back to his family, all of them, this beautifully complicated collection of people bound together by love and choice rather than just blood. Later that evening, they gathered at Bruce and Chloe's house, now a regular Sunday tradition. As the adults chatted on the porch, Bruce and Sarah climbed up to their treehouse, their favorite quiet spot. "Do you ever wonder," Sarah asked, looking at the stars through the window they'd built together, "what would have happened if you'd kept the treatment for your mom?" Bruce thought about it. "Sometimes. But then I look at everything we have now, not just you being healthy or mom being okay, but all of it. The foundation, our family, everything we built together. It's like that choice was a seed, and look at everything that grew from it." Below, they could hear the adults laughing. Rose was telling a story about her latest foundation project, art therapy for siblings of sick children. Jimmy's deep chuckle mixed with Chloe's gentle laughter, a sound that never failed to warm Bruce's heart. "You know what I think," Sarah said thoughtfully. "I think some things are just meant to be. Like maybe the universe was waiting for all of us to find each other." Bruce smiled, remembering the desperate boy he'd been, selling candy at traffic lights. Maybe. Or maybe we just proved that love really is stronger than anything, stronger than pride, stronger than fear, stronger than death itself. They climbed down to join their family, this extraordinary group that had formed from crisis and choice. Chloe was teaching Rose her secret recipe for hot chocolate, while Jimmy and Sarah's parents discussed expanding the foundation's reach. As Bruce watched them all, he realized that their story hadn't really ended that day at the hospital. It had just transformed, like everything else in their lives, into something larger and more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. Their family wasn't perfect, they still had disagreements, still faced challenges, but they faced them together. The love that had started with a boy's desperate attempt to save his mother had grown into something that saved others, healed old wounds and built bridges between worlds that once seemed impossibly far apart. And somewhere in the city, another family was receiving help from the foundation, another child was getting a chance to keep their parent, another seed of hope was being planted. The story continued, multiplying like love itself, touching lives far beyond their own, and Bruce knew, watching the stars appear above their home, that this was the greatest miracle of all. Dear friends, if Bruce's journey has touched your heart today, we invite you to be part of our storytelling family. Just as love multiplies when shared, these stories grow stronger with each person they reach. Please subscribe to our channel to join us on more emotional journeys and hit the like button to help others find this story. Share this video with your loved ones, perhaps they too need to be reminded of love's transformative power. Leave a comment below sharing how this story moved you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Together, let's create a community where heartwarming stories like Bruce's continue to inspire and heal. Remember, every subscription, like and share helps us reach more hearts with stories of hope and love.